And joining me now is Jen Budd, a former U.S. Border Patrol agent. Jen, it's good to see you again. I want to begin with your reaction to these two shootings, these two deaths, these fathers, both of whom trying to go to work, all the people who know them, describing them as peaceful family men who were living very regular lives. And not only that, we're in the process of trying to solidify and cement their status here in the United States. And I just want your reflection on what we've seen, these videos, these protests over the last several days.
I think that it's important to note first that immigration enforcement agencies, ICE, CBP, and Border Patrol do not have the legal authority to conduct traffic stops for traffic violations. In each of these incidents, the agencies and DHS has stated that the agents were targeting somebody when these men then drove by, and the agents decided to go after them, which means they were not targeted other than for the fact that they were racially profiling them. So they had no idea who these men were. They saw them drive by and said, hey, let's go after these people. That is a direct result of telling agents they have to meet quotas. And so they are stopping anybody they can based off of racial profiling. And that's based on their own statements. There's a difference between immigration violations and criminal violations. So when these agents suspected these men of being undocumented, being in the country without documents, then that is a civil administration violation. That is not a criminal offense. And so there's a difference in how you conduct a vehicle stop when you do that. When you are chasing somebody who maybe has just murdered their family and they have a gun and they're running down the highway shooting, that would be a felony stop. That's where you use ramming. That is where you use these other things that we're saying, where you block them in. And that is a very highly escalated use of force type of stop. And what we're seeing in these stops that are essentially just civil immigration violation stops, stopping to check your papers, they are using felony stops in order to do this. So when these agents are going in to create the first stop, they are going in with the attitude that this person may be a terrorist, but they have no evidence of that. So they're using a higher level of use of force when they engage immediately. This confuses the people in the cars because they know that they haven't committed any crime, so they don't understand what's going on. And at the same time, these agencies are refusing to properly identify themselves to people that they are stopping, and they are not wearing the correct uniforms and stuff. And so this confuses people. So the stop from the get-go becomes highly escalated.
You know, Jen, it was interesting to see how, pretty quickly DHS reversed course. They said they were going to halt their use of the traffic stops. And it seemed to be, in a way, almost a sort of accidental admission that perhaps these officers aren't properly trained. And then very quickly, we saw the president post online that, no, we cannot give up one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, he said, the traffic stop. What did that flip-flop tell you?
Well, that told me that, number one, when we look at ICE specifically, the agency of ICE, typically the way that they may have made their arrest in the past is they typically are arresting people who are being released from jail. So they have done a crime and they've done their time, and then immigration is notified and they come and pick them up. So they are not used to these types of stops. At the same time, the fact that Homan comes out and says, oh, we need to pause and retrain, it makes you, are you saying that you're putting agents out into the field with guns and teaching them how to do felony stops and not teaching them how to do basic everyday stops? And so what that says to me is that they possibly are not training them correctly. And as far as the president's comments about we need to have these vehicle stops in order to get criminals off the street, for the last 18 months, the statistics have been clear that 95% of those being arrested in this mass deportation, in these raids, have not committed a violent crime. 73% have not committed any crime whatsoever. So they are not taking criminals off the street. They're taking maybe a few, but the risks that they are taking and the violence that they are dishing out does not equal to what their statistics are showing. So they're using aggressive use of force in instances in which they are not necessary, and it's not legal.
Jen Budd, thank you, as always, for your expertise, your insight. You know because you were there. Thank you.
Thank you.